John Andretti, very famous NASCAR driver, one of the member of the very famous family. Not two, no three, but as many as four members of the family are very accomplished drivers. How was it possible to have so many cousins from the same family so accomplished?
Well, I mean, it goes back to my father and Mario when they started very young, 15, 16 years old, come into this country and started racing, and then obviously my father, as the story goes, he got hurt, and my uncle, of course, everybody knows Mario. If you know anybody in racing, pretty much probably know him. And then Michael and I started racing. Michael's brother Jeff, and then Marco came along, which was Michael's son, and then I have my son who is starting to race now too. So I wouldn't say that our family is all racers, but for the most part, whatever Andrettis there are left or that have come to this country, the big majority of them do race.
So how is it, would it be possible not to be a racer, or so much into a family there is no way out?
No, actually my son played soccer until he was 17, and I stopped racing full time because I never saw my family, so I thought I'll race part-time and I'll get a go-kart to kind of enjoy myself on the weekends, just to do something that and I didn't have to do it every weekend. But if I wanted to go race, I could go race a go-kart. And my son decided, well, can I go with you just to run with you? And he did, and he really enjoyed it. So he gave up being the captain of the varsity soccer team in school and started racing. And that was only a few years ago, and now he's already raced at 24 Hours of Daytona with me. He's raced super modified sprint cars, Silver Crown, a lot of different kinds of race cars already, and yet he's still very young into his racing career. So we weren't thinking racing. As a matter of fact, I just assumed that he not race as much as he does. As long as he wants to race, that's great, but if he doesn't want to race, that's okay with me too.
Anybody can try to race. What does it take to succeed in racing? What's the DNA, a secret ingredient here?
Well, I think in anything you have to have some natural ability. Obviously, I would think that if you just a desire to race is not enough. But then there's the opportunities. Unlike the ball and stick sports, if you want to race, you have to have a race car. And race cars aren't like going out and getting a basketball, a baseball, a football, or any other kind of sport where you can just get those and then go racing, or then go play the sport. For racing, it takes something more than that. So it takes an investment from your family or from somewhere to make that work. And I think that that's the hardest part about motorsports. And then once you do get that opportunity, it's sort of making the most of it. So for me, I was very fortunate that I had a family and I had supportive people. But on the other side, I didn't have my side of the family was not wealthy enough or capable of getting the funding to go racing. So I was fortunate enough with Michael and Mario and other people, that my father, that some doors got open, and then I was able to perform well enough to keep them open.
What kind of advice would you give to those that have a great desire, great spirit, but they lack resources?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest question I get ever about racing, because I often said that the UPS driver or FedEx driver or whatever could be the greatest race car driver that ever lived, and we don't know because he never got that opportunity. So I really don't know. I think that what happened years ago, we here at Andretti Indoor Karting and Games, we actually had there was young drivers where they would have these guys all over the country would come race go-karts at local facilities, and then the finale was held here, and I would be one of the judges, and somebody would win a full-time ride in a midget, and the person that funded all that ended up to the point that he couldn't fund it anymore, unfortunately. But I think that that's really the only way to do it, because racing, unfortunately, it takes, like I said, it takes a race car and resources, and with minimal resources, unfortunately, I don't know that the opportunity would exist.
Once you get to that position that you have resources, what does it take to be the best among the best?
I think just total commitment, dedication. The same thing it takes to be any other kind of great athlete. You have to train. You have to keep. You have to train. You have to live, eat, and breathe it, and you have to sacrifice all other things. Everything around you is secondary, and the only thing that can really be your main focus. If there's anything that comes in front of it, then you're not giving it your all. So it's there's plenty of other people that are willing to push you out of the way. And racing, if you look at it, the amount of people that are successful at it and make a living at it is a very small amount of people. So you're going to have to be better than them. You're going to have to work harder. And like I tell my son, you may not be as smart as somebody else, you may not be as good as somebody else, but you can always outwork them.
You mentioned training. Is all it takes to hours behind the wheel or something outside the racetrack?
Well, I think you have to train a lot of things. I think you have to not only physically cardio and muscular training, resistance training, but you also have to train your mind. You have to have the right attitude. You have to have the right mindset. You have to have a certain amount of mental strength because the cars are physically demanding, but yet the concentration level is so high and it's so for such a long period of time. Unlike any other sport where you're in and out of plays, and you have time to sit back, catch your breath, and relax. In motorsports, you don't. It's flat out, and it's often quite longer than in any other sport that plays. So it's a different kind of training, but like I said, it's more than just physical, it's mental too.
What's the most popular cross-training for race car drivers?
Well, I think a lot of drivers just like to run and cardio train and do it in the heat, do it in the conditions in which they feel like they're going to be in a race car. However, there's more to it than that. And I think from the other side, let's say when my uncle raced, a lot of drivers, they played tennis, they did other activities, and that's how they train. But as other drivers become more sophisticated in their training techniques, then you have to be there too. So the idea is if you're going to beat somebody at the racetrack is to make your race car better. Well, you need to make yourself better too, and so you have to try to make yourself better than the guy next to you. So if there's an opportunity to you think of something that can make you better, you should look at it.
So race car drivers are not just good drivers, they are great overall athletes. Is it safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely. People say, well, they're not really athletes. Well, so a golfer and a baseball player and people that pretty much are static most of the game are athletes, but yet drivers are not athletes. I beg to differ. So I think that drivers are probably some of the greatest athletes that are out there.
Well, the technology you mentioned and also the medial part of that to fit the small cameras like GoPro inside the car is like basically having a passenger with you and make the viewer feel what you feel almost. What do you think about this advancement?
Well, I think that the technology of putting the fans in as much of the conditioning and much inside the race car, I mean, now they have cameras that actually show the banking, so when the car goes in the corner, they see the G-loading. I think anytime that they can sort of get the sensation sitting in their living room of what's happening in a race car, I think that it's a positive thing. Obviously, coming to one of these facilities like we have here where they run the go-karts, that helps because now it's different than just driving on the street because you're in a competitive environment. Just like when you go to Richard Petty or Mario Andretti driving experience where you get to ride in a real race car with somebody, or they didn't even get to drive a real race car. I mean, those things where the fans are actually getting a taste of what it really is, because most people say, well, I drive to work. I could do that. I mean, I know how to put it in gear and go down the street, and I go pretty good. I pass people on the road. Well, it's totally different when you're racing, so I think that really helps put a perspective behind it. Some people go out and they do 4 laps around Charlotte, let's say in a stock car, and they're totally tired. We do 400 laps around that track.
Well, here at the Andretti's place, anybody can come, and especially young people, teenagers, the future drivers. Do you think the hours spent here on the world-class driving simulators will transfer to less accidents, to safer roads with safer drivers?
Oh, there's no question. I think that any kind of experience that they can get driving and they learn the limits of their capabilities and also the capabilities of the car, the vehicle in which they're driving, I think it is huge. When they get on the road, often they think that they're invincible, especially young guys, and they drive far outside of their capabilities, their talent. We sort of call it they run out of talent, and really what they do is they run out of experience, and because they don't know what to do with that. And I think that it definitely does help. I mean, here at Andretti's, at 8 years old, you can go in a young drivers group and they actually teach you to start driving. I think anytime you get those motor skills in going, kids obviously learn much quicker, so the earlier you can get them, the better.
Talking about the best among the best, here at the Andretti's place, you have the world's most sophisticated driver simulators. And nobody else has those. They're super sophisticated, very expensive, and give you like almost the real deal experience.
Yeah, and those, again, that's amazing. You know, because usually you can't get on those simulator like they have here anywhere unless you're into racing. And to think about it, that simulator, you can imagine where the technology is for like Formula One, where the simulators are unbelievable, where they actually have their reserve driver back at the factory driving the car with different setups while they're over in China or Singapore or who knows where racing, and then they say, well, try this, and I drive, okay, here's what the results I found, and that's how close they are. So it's an amazing piece of technology that all of a sudden now, you know, that might be something where you know, as you think about it, you know, where young drivers that can't afford to race, certainly you can bring them into a simulator and find out just what kind of capabilities they have without the risk or the expense of running a race car.
Is it possible with the advancement of technology, different drivers located all around the world, they can race against each other in a virtual space?
That would be awesome, and I think that they do. And I think that the idea of getting to race other people, the story goes, is that Denny Hamlin was racing Dale Earnhardt Jr. on a video game, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. helped him get his first ride because he saw that this guy was really good on a video game. So obviously talent does show even in the video games if you can drive those cars.
So someone can live in a very remote area, far away from the racetrack. Having access to a great quality video simulator can make the name for himself.
The potential is there. I mean, obviously the world is becoming more and more of a small place where, you know, your neighbors are Europe and, you know, and the Far East, you know, I mean, because we're so connected technology-wise that, yeah, absolutely, there's no question that, you know, pretty soon it's just that getting that opportunity just to be on that equipment, which I think is going to become more readily available.
And here we are at the grand opening of the new obstacle course, and that basically touches what you just said, not just the time in a go-kart, not in a simulator, but also a physical challenge. It basically completes the whole thing, and that's what makes the Andretti's place so special.
Yeah, I think it's a real thrill seeker's place. I mean, you can go to zip line, you can run the go-karts, you can run the ropes course, you can do the simulator, or you can just you play a lot of video games, and you can also have a great meal.
Yeah, once again, thank you for your time, and this place is going to be packed till capacity for many years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.